So we finally have a different race winner than Mercedes in 2026 because Lewis Hamilton won the 2026 Barcelona Grand Prix, and it was a race that I just had to miss in terms of a watch along because, well, I had a family commitment, but I was able to watch the entire race back after I came back home from it. And I gotta say, while the result was definitely interesting and a lot of people in a different position where you may expect it, the way that the race played out was a little boring. Up until the very end, it was pretty procedural, and sure, there were things that I do want to talk about, but other than that, I did not really think this is a race to really remember outside of course, the result. But I do have to give a massive credit, of course, to Lewis Hamilton for winning his 106th race in his career, his first for Ferrari, the third different team that he has actually won a race for, the oldest driver since 1970 to win a race. All of this was absolutely iconic and just absolute scenes. And as someone who started supporting Lewis Hamilton way back when I started to support anyone in Formula One, this was kind of unreal to see. I did not believe that Lewis had it in him after last year. I was thinking, oh, he is done, he's too old, he can't do it anymore. But yeah, he's shown that he still has that in him, even at 41 years old. It's like, wow. What actually might be even weirder is that Ferrari had a decent race strategy that actually was well executed and it won them the race. Now, of course, there was a little bit of luck with the virtual safety car coming right at the moment where Lewis had a pit window, but still, I think even without that virtual safety car, Lewis was in a very good spot to win that race. So yeah, that was actually interesting to see that Ferrari got the pit stop strategy right. And also, we did have a bit of a battle between George and Kimi, and it was interesting to see that after qualifying, it looked like George was well clear, 3/10 ahead of his teammate. It's like, yeah, okay, George is back, this is going to be his weekend. But during the race, he was actually struggling to keep up the pace, and it might have to do with the fact that he had to pit early because he needed to cover off Lewis. But on the flip side, it's like, okay, George, you are the more experienced driver. You should be able to look after your tires a bit more. You should be able to figure out a way to handle a full race distance a bit more than Kimi, because Kimi is still only in his second season. And yes, he's won 5 races in a row, but Kimi, he was pushing George right up until the very end when he had to retire. So there was definitely something going on there, and I'm still curious if/when we're going to see the Mercedes come together this year. But other than those things, I was a little disappointed by this race, mostly because of the start. Because the start at Barcelona is usually the thing that you want to watch, because it's such a long run to the first corner. And it was something that I was hyping up in my predictions video. I was thinking, oh, we're gonna have some chaos into the first corner, and some people from starting third or fourth can get into the lead. None of that happened, because into the first corner, the top 5 remained the exact same. Now, further back, there were a couple of positions changing, and it was mostly because Hadjar dropped all the way back because he had a terrible start. But yeah, unfortunately, there wasn't a lot of chaos that I was expecting, and I very much predicted. But let's reflect on my predictions from last week, because, well, they again were just not particularly good. First of all, my top 3 in qualifying is just wrong. It's just completely wrong. Because, finally I start to believe that Kimi is actually able to put it on pole, and then he doesn't. So yeah, he was actually in third, not on pole. Then I predicted George Russell in second. Well, he was in first. He got pole for a change. And then I said Lando, and it's like, no, Lando was not there. It was Lewis in second. Of course, that was the big surprise, that Lewis was there. Already in qualifying, he was very close behind George. And it would always come down to how the race would play out. He had a bit of luck. He had a different strategy. It just all worked out for him in the right way. So then my top 3 for the race I would consider slightly better than my top 3 for qualifying. It's still wrong though. I said Lando would win. He was third. And I do want to give myself a little bit of credit for predicting a non-Mercedes to win the race, because that did happen. It was just the wrong team, unfortunately. And I really shouldn't back my team because we are so slow, it seems. Look, the fact that Lando finished on the podium was luck. It wasn't necessarily because we had the pace. We weren't there on merit in that regard. I did predict Lewis P3, he was P1. So, if you flip Lando and Lewis, I'm still wrong. Because I had the wrong P2, because I said Kimi, and it was George, it was the other Mercedes, and yeah, I can't really give myself too much credit. This top three it's not good, it's wrong. It's just, there are a couple of names there that are on the podium, it's just not in the right position. I will say though, McLaren's pace was so inconsistent throughout the entire weekend because after free practice 2, Lando was quickest, Oscar was third. I'm like, oh my god, we're in a great position, we can actually challenge for something here. And in free practice 3, it was still looking good, like both cars still in the top 5. It's like, okay, we might actually be able to do something. And in qualifying, all of a sudden, we were fucking nowhere. We qualified 4th and 7th, and I'm like, what happened to the pace from free practice? What in the hell changed compared to the free practices that were going so well? I have no idea. But in the race, we were just nowhere. And again, I will take a 3rd and a 5th place. It's actually the most amount of points that a team scored joint with Ferrari because both McLaren and Ferrari scored 25 points, which is the most of any team this weekend. So, I'll take those points for the constructor standings. But we had no real business being in the positions that we finished because, again, it was luck. It was because Antonelli retired and Leclerc retired, because otherwise both of them would finish ahead of Oscar and Antonelli would finish ahead of Lando. So, luck was kind to us in that regard. And if this is an indication of where our car is right now, the next couple of weekends could be very difficult for us. I don't know when we have an upgrade coming, if we do have an upgrade coming or upgrades coming. So I do think we very much need one because, let's be fair, we haven't had one since Miami, and when we had one in Miami, we were very good. So it's like, okay, if we can get another upgrade, we could be up there again. But until then, it's going to be a bit of a struggle, isn't it? And speaking of struggles, both the home drivers had struggles, and I made predictions for the home drivers where I did say Alonso would struggle. So let's be fair, this is a very easy prediction to make, and it's actually more ballsy if you predict the Aston Martin not to have that much of an issue throughout the weekend. If you predict Aston Martin to do well, because, well, Aston Martin was once again absolutely fucking nowhere. And I think both cars retired, and Alonso retired from his home race. And Alonso was out-qualified by Lance Stroll for the first time in 42 races. He had a 41-0 record, and now it's 41-1. So, yeah, this was definitely a weekend to forget for Alonso. And it wasn't much better for the other home hero, Carlos Sainz. Now, Sainz actually did finish the race, but he was in 12th and he was 2 laps down. He was way off of any points. So, I predicted Sainz to be in the points. He wasn't, so that was just a bad prediction, wasn't it? However, I do have one good prediction in here, which is where I said that both Racing Bulls would be in the top 10, and they were. Now, a bit inherited, but still, you gotta be there, and they are. So actually, Lawson is having a very good season quietly. He's kind of always just there in the points, even though you don't always notice him. It's yeah, he's actually doing a very good job. And Lindblad in his rookie season is also extremely impressive. So both those Racing Bulls are really good. And I also think it has to do with the engine, because it seems that Ford actually created a very good engine, because Red Bull is also pretty good, outside of course, the chassis and other certain issues. But in terms of the pure engine that both the Red Bulls and the Racing Bulls have, it's that is a solid engine that doesn't really have reliability woes, of course, a Mercedes or other engines, because there are other engines on the grid that have so many issues, but Ford actually created a proper engine, so that's why I think the Racing Bulls are working as well as they are. But one car that is definitely not working is Audi, and I said that Hülkenberg would get into the top 10, and this was looking great after qualifying. Seriously, Hulkenberg, for the first time getting into Q3, I was like, oh my god, this is my prediction coming true. And then I heard what happened. It's the craziest thing that possibly can happen, and it's just the worst absolute luck that a driver can have, because Hulkenberg did not retire because of an engine issue or something. Apparently, there was a stone of the gravel trap that came into Hulkenberg's car and activated the kill switch button. And it's like, you can't make this up. If you were to have something like this in a movie script, people would be like, you're crazy, this would never actually happen. This happened. This actually made sure that Hulkenberg had to retire the car. That's absolutely insane that is what happened. But yeah, Hulkenberg was having a great weekend up until that very point. And I do believe he would have finished in the top 10. He would have scored good points for Audi. I do think this prediction would have come in, but we'll never know. Because it just, oh my god, I feel terrible for Hulkenberg. And I'm just thinking, like, Audi cannot catch a break this year. It seems quite often that they are on pace, that they have a good car, that they can score points with both drivers, Hulkenberg and Bortoleto. But the moment that anyone is doing well, the Audi car is just like, no, I'm not going to function. It's just not happening. One team that is really happening, though, is Alpine, because once again, they got a double point score, and very, very good results for Gasly, finishing in P7, like best of the rest. Again, he is showing that he is really gelling with the car now, because early in the season, he was having a couple of issues, and he was behind Colapinto, but it's like now he has had a couple of races where he really showed himself, of course, getting the podium back in Monaco. It shows that the Alpine is working, that Gasly is working with it, Colapinto is working with it, so good on Alpine. I should probably include them into my predictions from now on if I want to just bank on some easy points. And finally, I want to quickly touch on Red Bull, because Hadjar had a really bad start, but he had a great race in terms of overtaking. He was overtaking so many cars, and he actually finished right back where he started. So credit to him for getting up there once again, because yeah, it wasn't looking very good after the start. I think he lost like 10 or 9 positions or something. So crawling the way back up there, especially if you have such a bad start, it's like mentally it's a hit. And he was able to shake it off and just get his head down and keep going. And it's like massive credit to him, because Hadjar sometimes is a very like hot-headed driver who can lose himself a bit, but this definitely showed a bit of maturity on his side. And I mean, Max was just there. He never really looked a threat for the podium. He never looked to be in this race. I don't even know if I saw Max at any point during this race, except for maybe when he made a pit stop. But I mean, solid points in P4. That's really all I can say about him. It's just, yeah, the Red Bull car wasn't necessarily there this weekend. Now, I do have to give a massive credit to the people who make the graphics for these sessions, because they inserted a new graphic this weekend whenever a driver would cause a yellow flag. Because so often in the past, whenever there's a yellow flag, it's like, oh, there's a yellow. Who's causing it? And very often, they would not instantly cut to them, because what if they had a very heavy crash and it might be very serious and you don't want to show a driver who might not be moving? It's always a very difficult thing. So they always want to be a bit cautious with it. Or on the flip side, if the camera at that point is following a very tense battle between two drivers, you can't just cut away from that. You want to keep showing that. So they see a yellow flag, and this time they showed whoever was causing that yellow flag, so that you at least know, oh, that's the one. Because that was always a question that I had whenever I would see a yellow flag, like, oh, who is the reason for this yellow flag? And then when they show the graphic, it's like, oh, now I know. I found that extremely relieving, that I at least got to know that, well, in qualifying, Charles Leclerc crashed, or that during the race, Alonso stalled on track. I want to know those type of things, and I was very glad that we got that graphic, so props to the people making those graphics. But again, I thought that the Barcelona Grand Prix was not the most interesting, a little boring, at least for the first 2/3. At the final third, it did come to life a bit more, so that was at least good. But overall, not really a race that I am going to remember for very long, but that is all about I have to say. What are your thoughts on the Barcelona Grand Prix? Are you a Lewis Hamilton fan? Are you a Ferrari fan? Was this a good race for you, or maybe not? Please let me know your thoughts and opinions in the comments below. Please leave a like on the video if you did, and subscribe to the channel for more Formula 1, 2, and 3 content. I will be back next week with predictions for Austria and of course the Austrian Grand Prix. We'll see Formula 1, 2, and 3, so it's going to be a busy weekend of watch along. Stay tuned for that. And until then, take care.